We are live. Welcome, everybody, to another exciting episode of the Black Powder Podcast. I think you just figured out that my melanated brother-in-arms, Mr. Marcus Matthews, my co-host, who tonight is going by the moniker Libertarian Sweet Daddy Dilf.
That's me.
Has found some sound effects over here that he's going to be trying out tonight. So go ahead and give us another clap, round of applause. That was kind of cool, man. There you go. Whoa, yeah. As always, the Black Powder Podcast is brought to you by the Firearms Radio Network. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Black Powder Podcast on the Firearms Radio Network. We appreciate our listenership. We're also brought to you by Common Arms Trade Company. Common Arms Trade Company is a licensed FFL. That means they're a gun dealer in the state of Florida. So here's one thing for many of you that you probably understand. Maybe some of you don't. You can buy guns from other states and have them shipped to your FFL in your hometown. So if you're shopping for a new AR, new AK, a new pistol, whatever it is, go ahead and visit Common Arms Trade Company.com. Sorry, I didn't want to mess it up. Also, find them on Linktree for all their stuff. The guy Dom, he runs pretty good content. Find him on Facebook. We really like him. And thank you for sponsoring the Black Powder Podcast tonight, Common Arms Trade Company. I was looking at their website, Marcus.
Yes.
And one thing they do that's really cool, man, is like, so a lot of you and I know we've been to the range, and you get a guy who has just gone to the store and picked up an off-the-shelf AR, right?
Right.
And then they put on about $1,000 worth of bullshit on it, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And it looks ridiculous and it functions like crap, and it's literally just, this guy just threw away $2,000, right?
Right.
So Common Arms Trade Company, he'll custom build you an AR based off what you want. So, hey, tell them your size, tell them your weight, tell them your shooting stance, tell them what's important to you, whether you want something that's weather resistant, you want something that's light carry, you want something that's good for range, you want something that's good for speed. This guy will build one for you, man. We need more people like this. So definitely get into business. Absolutely. So,
yeah, and I think there's one important thing about that is that if you're going to make that purchase of that AR-15, that is a great way to do it, but simply because you are taking that extra responsibility of gun ownership and showing these idiots that we're not this monolithic group of barbarians. Shit.
Have some class with your rifle purchases, people. So visit Common Arms Trade Company. Their website's really awesome. He's got pretty much everything on here, and so I think the next time that I purchase something, I will definitely be doing it through him for sure. So to the listeners at home, all right, let me tell you a story. There's a guy, believe it or not, who grew up in the woods like a feral child. He lived off the grid, had no electricity, used an outhouse. And no, this wasn't like 200 years ago. This was very recently. And this man leaves the feral existence of his childhood. He goes on to found an internet company, makes millions and millions of dollars, is super successful. And then on top of that, he goes, you know what? I can't just sit back and rest on my laurels. I'm going to try to run for president. And that's who we have today on the show, Mr. Lars Mapstead, hopeful for the Libertarian presidential party, Libertarian presidential candidate. Thank you so much, man, for being here with us tonight, dude.
Man, thanks for having me again. That's awesome.
Yeah, we always like to have it sitting down with you. You're always easy to talk to and always have pretty good opinions on things. So before we kind of get into like some modern current events, like the really sad news, I kind of want to like break this up just a bit. Man, I'm sitting here looking at some of these. I had some news stories here, like some dumb news stories. So like apparently someone is suing McDonald's because a chicken nugget was too hot. Have you heard this, Marcus?
Yes, I did.
Okay, did you hear this? Lars, have you heard this?
I didn't hear that one, but that's
it was, to be fair, I have to back that up. It wasn't hilarious because it was a kid who got it. But the fact that happened, I find, because normally all the food I get from McDonald's, which is few and far in between, is always cold.
Well, that's what I was saying. Is probably what's going to happen is like everything's going to be lukewarm now.
Yeah.
So I'm reading this.
This is going to be frozen.
This is the attorney from McDonald's is quoted as saying, Mrs. Holmes, this is the parent who bought these chicken nuggets, purchased 32 chicken nuggets that day.
Wow.
Okay. The evidence will show that for them, 31 were no problem. And there was one apparently really hot chicken nugget. This is a real story. This is actually in your court systems today, people. We had another one off air. We might end the broadcast with that one that Lars brought to our attention.
Well, I mean, there was a thing where this many years ago, a woman got scolded by hot coffee at McDonald's, and I think she won like $4 million or something like that, right?
And apparently her burns were pretty bad, actually, though.
Oh, okay.
They're saying, like, from what I'm reading from this brief, is like the chicken nugget fell between like the kid and like the seatbelt. Okay. And like it sat there for 2 minutes and apparently caused a burn. So That doesn't seem
Right.
like lava hot to me, man. You know, I don't know.
I have one point to interject here. I
Sure.
think the mother needs to be investigated for buying 32 chicken nuggets for her family. What is going on in that household?
Dude, and now notice it didn't say that like they were purchased all at once. That could have been like, you know, the 10:30. She could have been back at 3, and this is like the 7 o'clock run, man.
Fair enough. Fair
You know,
enough.
in this time of inflation, those McDonald's app points come in handy. So, you know, you can turn in a reward for 6 free nuggets. So maybe that's what she was doing. So no hating on the mother. It's just an interesting story. There's another one here, man. So like in Oklahoma, this is yesterday, okay? They dispatched 2 police officers because they think that someone's screaming for help, okay? Let me find the story here. I had it just pulled up. So they think someone's screaming for help. They send out officers, and they're like, someone's in the woods yelling for help, okay? It's not a person. All right, so listen to this. Enid, Oklahoma. Police officers in Oklahoma thought they were responding to a person in distress on Monday. What we're surprised to discover, it was actually just a barn animal. Body cam footage posted on social media shows Officer David Sneed and Neil Story of Enid Police Department walking down the field toward what sounds like someone screaming loudly for help. The officers on the body cam saying, I think that's a person. They turn the corner, and it's actually a goat. There you go, man. So there's your police resources for you right there.
There's my goat. I grew up with goats. I grew up with goats. My kid was yelling the other day. She said, I think I hear a kid screaming, Dad. And I ran outside, and I'm like listening real. And I'm like, yeah, there's something screaming. But it wasn't a kid. It was a peacock.
Oh, really?
Oh,
Peacocks make the weirdest noises, dude. Like the first time I heard one, I thought, am I in Jurassic Park or something? What the hell is that? That is some crazy stuff.
We have wild peacocks in Southern California, and right now we're in the middle of parrot season where I live. So these huge flocks of parrots fly over our house, screaming to all hell and back for some strange reason. The whole lot of them, and it's just like, you know, I have some, what is it, six shot that I use for dove. No, 8-shot that I use for dove.
Wait, are you? Is there like a parrot hunting season in California?
I don't know, but they're an invasive species, and I think it should be perfectly legal to take them out because they're freaking annoying. They scream. It's not even a song. It's just random screams. So I can't even imagine you hearing a goat, because I've seen those videos of goats that sound like people screaming, and that could be just plain frightening. Lars, is that what you grew up with?
That is absolutely what I grew up with. We had goats. Oh man, so much. Like, one of the stories I like to tell is my mom would send me off to school in the morning, and sometimes, you know, we never bought milk. We didn't really have money, but we had goats, and she'd milk the goats, right?
Right.
Well, so she was hippie parent, you know, and she was big into grape nuts. She didn't like me to have. She wouldn't let me have any cereal with sugar in it, right? So no Lucky Charms, no, you know, Fruit Loops, none of that stuff. No, what I got was grape nuts, right? And the thing
like
is,
old people cereal.
sometimes she'd be like, okay, I got these grape nuts, and then she forgot to milk the goat, right? So it's morning time. It's like 6 a.m. She runs out, and she's just got the bowl, and she's just milking the goat straight into my bowl of grape nuts. And then she just hands it to me, and it's all warm, and there's like hairs and stuff. And I'm like, oh, damn, again. Like, yeah, no, I had some serious abuse going on when I was a kid, for sure.
Dude, I don't know. That might have turned you kind of into Superman. Like, that's like a superhero origin story, you know?
Yeah,
like,
it toughened me up for sure a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have goats now? Like, do you have nothing? You're like, no, I don't want no farm animals.
I got a lot of
trauma.
No, I have a lot of animals. My wife's a big animal lover, and so we've got dogs, rescue dogs, and rescue cats, and koi fish, and she feeds every bird in all of Northern California. They all are at my house, right? I'm lucky that I don't migrate up from Marcus's house. Otherwise, I'd have all those parrots. It's too cold up here, I think. They stay down there. That's good, because I don't need any
nothing
more.
You have to milk, basically. Like,
no.
Nothing you got to milk. Okay. No. All right, there you go. And I got one more story for you. This is in honor of Marcus, because Marcus is always poking fun at the Bud Light controversy, because you know, we don't really care, right? Like,
who drinks Bud Light to begin with?
Who did begin with? Like, yeah, it was already crappy beer before. It doesn't matter. But apparently in Canada, Ontario, Canada story, a man and woman were both assaulted by a group of suspects who thought they had purchased Bud Light. According to a press release from the York Regional Police, the couple was leaving a liquor store in the city of Vaughan, Ontario, Saturday evening. They were approached by 3 men. one of the men yelled anti-homosexual slurs at the couple and the police, and the police have labeled it a possible hate-motivated incident. So everyone listening, it's not just in America, even in Canada, people are getting mad about the Bud Light thing. Don't they have better beer in Canada?
Oh, they make great beer in Canada. That's why I find it so surprising that somebody would buy crappy American beer in Canada. Fun story. Oh, not a story, but point. In Germany, when my niece was over there in the army, she said they love Bud Light and Coors Light in Germany.
Really?
The place where in Europe probably makes the best beer aside from Belgium. But they actually enjoy drinking American piss water in Germany. But
yeah, anyway, I thought they could have just told the police that they were just mad at them for buying crappy beer, right? And probably would have avoided the possible hate-motivated incident. So, yeah, I saw that this morning or whatever, and I was like, dude, I got to bring that up to Marcus because we're always talking about the Bud Light thing.
To be fair, real quick, I feel it should be legal at least once a year to slap somebody that annoys you, and if that's their trigger is buying the Bud Light. I'm not talking about knock somebody's teeth out or that Russian
like a light purge, purge.
It would all be backhands, so you couldn't really get a good, if you come down, you're putting some torque and force on it, but if you just get a good backhand once a year, your person of your choice without charges. But I'm sorry, Lars. That's
we had to bring a little levity to the conversation here, because we're going to be talking about some serious stuff. So into the serious stuff that we're going to talk about tonight. As everyone's well aware, Title 42 is ending. Okay, and for those of you who don't understand what that is, essentially right now, before Title 42, an individual could come to the border and they could kind of work a loophole in the system seeking asylum. And the asylum seekers will be granted conditional access to the country. That was kind of halted by this idea of a COVID emergency, right? Title 42. It's now ending because this 3-year-long emergency is finally coming to an end. And so everybody, whether they're left, right, libertarian, any political pundit on the radio, television, is all talking about immigration. And so with Lars as a potential presidential candidate, who has some really good policy agendas on a lot of stuff, I thought it'd be interesting to see his point of view on this, man. Like, where are you on this whole immigration thing? Where are we messing up? How do we move forward? What do you think philosophically about it? What's Lars' take on it?
Yeah, I think it's a really, it's a challenging issue. It's an important issue that people, have strong feelings about, right? Like there's a lot of strong feelings about this issue. It's not, it's most people don't shrug at it. They believe one way or another what we should do with immigration. And, honestly, I think like 10 years ago, I was more for, before I was like really introduced to libertarian ideas, I was more for like a secure border and like, having rules and regulations and that sort of thing to like keep everything, together and not harm people and that sort of thing. But as I kind of looked into more libertarian thought processes and ideas, I came down to a couple of things. One is a lot of people fear that they're going to lose their jobs with immigration. That's like one of the big fears, right? Like, and while that's true, I was looking at a stat recently. There's 8 or 9 million job openings in America right now.
Wow.
That are not filled. There's the 8 or 9 million jobs that are left unfilled right now. And I think we had something like 2 million something amount of people coming across the border in the last year, right? So even at that rate, it wouldn't fill up, for a while. And what's also interesting is as you add more people, it creates more jobs, right? Because those people are buying stuff at the grocery store, they're going to the gas station, and it just, so it's not a 1-for-1 loss, right? It's as long as those people are productive and contributing to society, it kind of snowballs on itself, right? And so that's why we always have kind of a running level of unemployment and also the labor force participation, right? How many
that's
people?
That's a really good point to bring up. Yeah. Exactly. I had a buddy that owned gas stations. He owned like Chevron stations, and he built one time, and then 6 months later, like a Circle K was going across the street. And I asked him, I said, man, aren't you worried that like your sales are going to go down? Like here you are, you're one gas station. You think in terms of zero-sum game, right? Like a lot of people do. He goes, no, Michael, he said, business begets business. My business will be better because there's now another gas station here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's that same kind of concept. Yeah.
Yeah, it's in my business that was the case. In my business, we actually collaborated with all the competitors because it turned out we could in my business was online marketing and sales, and one of the things that we would do is they'd come to my website, and if they didn't like what I was selling them or they weren't quite interested in that, I could send them to one of my competitors, and if the sale was made on one of my competitor sites, I made money off that,
Yeah.
right?
You got a commission.
So
Yeah.
so we just started like rotating the people around all the different websites, and everybody was making money and lifting all boats, right? Kind of a thing. And even though some of us were even direct competitors, we would share the traffic between each other, and that made us all make a lot more money, right? So
Right.
I think that's a big part of it. And the other thing is as being in high tech like I was for a while, we needed a lot of engineers, coders, people to code our websites and do that sort of thing. And there just wasn't enough people that had that skill set, and they weren't training them fast enough, and we weren't going to get them. So a lot of times there was people in India that had that skill set, or in Ukraine, or in several other countries, and we would try to get those people to come over, but you had to have the HB1 visa or whatever it was, right? That you had to have this, and so a company could sponsor those people to come, but it was really limited in the amount. Like they had it was a lottery almost, right? And so all of the companies in Silicon Valley were always clamoring for more workers that were needed. And then the other thing I was reading when I was kind of like looking into this is healthcare workers are in a huge shortage of healthcare workers, right? And
Right.
there's other countries that have healthcare workers that want to come here and work, but we make it so impossible for them to do that we continue to have a healthcare worker shortage, right? So it's not just low skilled, low end jobs that are that we need to fill. We need to fill them across the board, right? So that's one of the things. And then I live in a area in Salinas Valley, is like one of the biggest agricultural centers in America. It's a very fertile area, and a lot of stuff comes out of the Salinas Valley. And I have all these friends that are farmers, right? And they need workers, and they don't have enough workers. Even with all the people migrating from Mexico, they still don't have enough workers. They need more, and so they would be willing to sponsor those people. They're willing to house those people on their farms. Oftentimes, like they have a whole like system set up to like take care of these seasonal workers, because it's not necessarily all year long, right? It's like,
Right.
And so they have whole programs that they basically do to keep everybody maintained. And they're not taking anybody's jobs. Nobody here wants those jobs. They don't want those jobs. Like I when I drive my kids to school, we see a lot of people working in the fields at 6 a.m. And I tell my kids that's one of the hardest jobs in America right now, is picking strawberries or picking artichokes or whatever. I'm like, I wouldn't last like 2 hours out there, to be honest with you. My back would be broken. I'd be whining and complaining that it was too hard. And that's America's always been like that, right? When the Irish came over, when the Italians came over, when different ethnicities came over, they often take the hardest jobs that there are, the jobs that nobody else wants to do, because they're kind of entry level jobs, right?
Marcus is like, oh, what about us black people?
Yeah,
we kind of had some hard jobs too.
I don't want to provide too much levity to these awesome points, but I could say as black people, we ain't picking shit.
Yeah, like y'all, you're gonna have to find replacements.
You're gonna have to find some workers, and that's where I think America shoots itself in the foot. Hello?
You're here, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's where America literally pisses in its cereal bowl with its grape nuts and takes hot spoons full of piss, because Americans aren't going to do those jobs. One of the only things that Dianne Feinstein ever did that I agreed with is she posted all those agricultural jobs at the California EDD and all these openings, and not one American applied for any of those jobs.
That tells you everything you need to know right there. I mean, that tells you everything. I mean, and I was telling this to Lars off air in a different conversation, is, again, we had a tornado like a month and a half ago, whatever, and they're still rebuilding stuff, and people are getting new roofs. And dude, I mean, these guys, every roofing contractor, every one of these people is immigrants. Like all the people that are up there actually doing the work. And it's hard labor, and they're knocking it out in like 2 or 3 hours, putting a roof on a house, and they're moving to another one. Can you imagine Like I just couldn't. And they're doing this 6-7 days a week, man. You know, and like I said, you know, here in Arkansas, there's a group of individuals who I would consider very, very hard right, who probably have very, I would say, maybe more medieval versions of what they think immigration control should be, right? And you know, they're all anti-immigrant till it's time to get a roof. And then they're like, "Yeah, man, come on, Hector, put one on, bro." Like, me casa su casa, dude.
Well,
you know.
Yeah.
So,
You know-
so Lars, that's kind of the economic point I think is really true. Is that, you know, one thing libertarians are good at is understanding, you know, prosperity in business requires prosperity in workers, right? And you have to have a great labor pool to do that. Like, and we have such a low labor participation rate in this country already.
Yep.
A record low labor participation rate.
40-year lows right now.
Yeah. And so, and that's one of those, and in fact, I think you actually even called the Biden administration out on Facebook one day about that. Or one of their like little talking heads said
Yeah, I
something
do
about,
often, because they're always talking about how great the unemployment rate is. And I say that's awesome and everything, but we have less people working today than at any time in the last 40 years. So why don't you talk about that stat? They only push the stats that work for them, that make them look good, right? And they never tell the whole story, right? And and that's media too. All media is like that, right? They just give you like a little taste of it that like fits their narrative, and they conveniently leave out all the important stuff that you need to have to make an informed decision in your life, right?
As long as you got that little happy talking point. So we've talked about how, like, I think that, you know, a sort of more free market approach to immigration could probably be beneficial for jobs for everybody. Okay. Like, and I believe that. And honestly, the idea is that has to be sold to the American voter. Like, they have to understand that concept, which, like you said, requires they kind of understand the whole picture. But the real like talking point from a lot of people, and again, I think this just was today or maybe yesterday, the Republican House passed, I think they call it Section 2. Which is a border, basically, you know, bill. It's not going to go through the Senate. It's not going to pass. Right. It's essentially a doubling down on kind of the increased amount of technology. Border wall is the big one. It requires, I was reading through the legislation this morning or this afternoon. It requires like a 90-day plan from the secretary, you know, how you're going to get the wall done, where the materials are coming from, you know, all these, I mean, literally it's just like doubling down on this. And it sounds really good because people do want a safe southern border. I agree with that. Yeah. So how does a free market, you know, solution make the border safer though?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to say two points. One is that no matter what, yes, some people's jobs are going to be displaced, and there's going to be people that are like, see, that guy took my job, and now I'm not having food, or I'm not paying my thing, and so, you know, I don't like those people because they took my job. That's going to happen, right? But it's not like the majority of the time, right? And the truth is that person will likely find another job somewhere else, right? That's the real, because there's 9 million jobs open right now that are unfilled, right? The other situation that we have is that the baby boom generation is all retiring right now. And pandemic, what happened was baby boomers were like looking at pandemic, and they were like, oh, I'm locked up and I'm not going to be working, and I'm getting this government checks. And you know what? I'm supposed to retire in 2 years, but screw it. I don't want to go into the office anymore. I don't want to work anymore because I don't want to get COVID or whatever. And so they retired early. 3 million baby boomers retired early. That was like, they just disappeared out of the workforce, and that was the end of it. Right. So, oh, come on.
Oh, there you go.
We still got you.
All right. It was, my computer was going to sleep.
Yeah, that's what happened to me.
So these, the workforce is shrinking because of the baby boom decline, right? And we still have another, like, I think 10 years left of the tail end of the baby boom. So we're going to have a declining workforce for 10 years. And this also goes into Social Security too, right? Because you have all these people that are retiring, and there's not as many people working. And so there's not enough people to pay for the Social Security. Yeah. We're literally living paycheck to paycheck off of payroll tax right now. If you got rid of payroll tax, Social Security and Medicare would be bankrupt in less than 1 year. There's not a big kitty of money to pull from. We're literally living off the workers of today to pay for the retirees of today. If they stop working, or we don't have enough workers, those retirees are screwed. It's a Ponzi scheme, but that's how it goes right now.
Okay,
and that's a really good way to sell it to the electorate is you know, because again, a lot of the baby boomers, they typically vote. In fact, you know, the average voter in my district's around 62. You know, they're very involved in elections. We have to get some more workers on the rolls here. We need them on there. If you want to keep these programs going, at least for you, and I think we talked before about crossfading it for young people, where young people could begin to opt out of it. But the people who are on it now, like, hey, we need some people in here. Like, I'm with you, man. I mean, because every entrepreneur that I talk to, every small business owner that I talk to says, Michael, my number one problem, besides the fact that everything costs 5 times what it used to, is I can't find people to work.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask Lars this question. As libertarians seeking a free market answer to building the wall or the border security, should we bring in immigrants to build a wall? Because as with Michael's example of how they put the roofs up in Arkansas, wouldn't it be more cost effective if we brought in immigrants to build a wall?
So I've watched some pretty good documentaries and kind of done some deep dive on the wall, right? And it's basically impossible because there's these canyons in I want to say Texas or Arizona, right?
They're in Texas, yeah. I know.
And it's like they're like 1,000 feet deep, right? You're not going to put a wall across that, right? You're just not, right? There's areas that you're not. And look, we all know prohibition doesn't work. Right?
Exactly.
Prohibition against guns doesn't work. Prohibition against alcohol doesn't work. Prohibition against drugs doesn't work. And prohibition against people doesn't work. Right? Look, we already outlaw people coming to the United States. And 2.4 million people came to the United States. It's outlawed. You guys are outlawed. We're not letting you in. We're gonna, and it's like, oh, we're gonna build a wall. Well, how many times have we heard about tunnels dug under the ground
in Tijuana,
So you don't think that's going to keep happening, right? Yeah. Because there's a financial incentive to come to America, and as Michael has pointed out many times, there's coyotes that charge like $10,000 for people to get smuggled across the border. So you don't think because they have that incentive now, because we've created a black market with our prohibition, right? You don't think those people are going to build a big old tunnel and they're going to be like having hundreds of people going underground under your we're gonna
happening right. That's literally happening right now.
That's right. So you think that the wall is going to change that? No, it's just going to make people placated and feel good. And look, here's the real, right? The real is Donald Trump had but control of the presidency and both parts of Congress, right?
Right.
They could have passed that wall if they wanted to. They didn't pass that wall because they didn't want to. They want to use it as a talking point to raise funds in the next election. And where are we at right now again? Oh, boys, we need a wall. It's like, well, you guys were in charge. Why didn't you do what you said you were going to do? Oh, you need more money. Oh, I see. Because giving more money to you is going to get the wall done. Come on.
So, and we talk about this all the time. Libertarians like ourselves, we were talking about balanced budgets and sound monetary policy since the 70s. Literally, Nixon takes America off the gold standard, and then we're like, this is stupid. This is going to be terrible. You're going to be robbing people for generations. You're going to saddle them with debt. You got to balance the budget. That's how you get sound money, is you don't borrow too much. You don't spend too much. You don't print into existence. How much is a wall going to cost, first off, just to build? And then it would be like if all three of us here were like roommates at like a frat house, okay? And we all throw our money on the table to fund the house. And you go, dude, we can't even afford to keep the water on. And I'm like, man, I know that, but we're going to build a jacuzzi in the backyard because we need one. And you'd be like, well, how do we heat it, Michael? Now we just have another thing that's going to be decaying that has to be funded. So what is the libertarian response? At least what's Lars's response to that? How does a free market solution, again, how do we undercut those revenue, centers? How do we save money? How do we make them safer?
Yeah. So I think I'd probably be in agreement with everybody here that we want a safer southern border, right? We don't want terrorists coming across the southern border. We don't want killers coming across the southern border. We don't necessarily want cartels running drugs across the southern border, right? So to me, right now, because of our prohibition, we have 2 million people coming across the border randomly all over the place, right? And they're just streaming across the border all over the place, right? Because we don't have a system to help them assimilate into the culture, right? So we're just basically burying our heads in the sand while this situation goes on, and it's not going to stop. It's going to keep going. No matter who gets in office, this is going to keep going, right? And so the thing is we need to get that stream of people from going just randomly, okay? And we need to give them some solutions on how they can come to America, get a work visa, right? We don't need to make them citizens, but they want to come here and work. They can come here and work. They can come here and participate in the system, right? Now, here's the thing. If you make it super easy for those people to get a work visa and come and start working and come and start paying taxes and putting into our system, they're going to come through the checkpoints because it's going to be super easy, right? There's not going to be an incentive to be streaming across the border in the middle of the night and risking your life out in the desert. They're going to. So now, all of a sudden, there's these vast open areas of border where no one's coming across. And then hold on a minute. There's a dude that's coming across. One guy. What's he trying to do? Right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it's like, oh, the people who are trying to come across like shady, yeah, we nail those guys and check out what they're doing and seeing what they're doing because we've got a really easy, unshady way to do it. So why are you being shady? Right.
That's right.
And so all of a sudden we can put our resources and you can't, if you have 2 million people coming across the border, how are you going to know which one's the bad guy? Yeah. How are you going to know, and the thing is here's the thing with that Title 42, right? The Title 42, it basically, they would grab them, they would then process them, and then they would deport them, a lot of them, right? A lot of them were getting deported. So I don't know of that 2.4 million people, how many of them were retreads, right? Because I heard sometimes people will try it up to 30 times to get across the border, right?
And that's absolutely correct. When I wrote my immigration policy in my 2022 campaign, which is very similar to kind of what you're talking about here, kind of a pay to enter, pay to stay, streamline it. Let's undercut revenues of these bad guys. I had a buddy that worked for ICE and Border Patrol, did a TDY in El Paso, and he's like, dude, we called them boomerangs. Because you'd see the same dude every day for like 2 weeks.
Right.
Because he would just get shoved over here and they just come back and because that's what they're going to do, right? Yeah. And he's like, how much money did we spend doing this with him?
The same person over and over again.
And he could have just given us $2,500, $3,000 here, run my background check. Thank you very much. Here's your visa. Thank you. And now you've made money. You haven't spent money. And now you've solved a problem. You haven't created a problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Whatever immigration system that we come up with, whatever reform that we come up with, my ideal is that it doesn't cost the taxpayer anything.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Whatever immigration policy we have, it shouldn't cost the taxpayer anything.
Yeah. Well, there's two things. I think Title 8 is way more harsh than Title 42. Because Title 8, you come over the first time the wrong way. If you get caught boomeranging back over here, you can face prison time. And then after you do your prison time, you're getting deported. So that's going to take a lot of years, if not months, off people's lives. And secondly, I don't think America is truly looking at the sources or the reasons why these floods of immigrants are coming mainly from Central America and Venezuela. America has its problems with Venezuela, but I don't think they're any more brutal than China. And then we have ships and immigrants coming from China every single day here. And with Central America, if you're not going to look into the Monroe Doctrine and why the term Banana Republic was coined in that region, then you're not understanding. A lot of people in America think these things are created in vacuums. They're not. These are all historical events that one leads into the other, one causes the other. And until one of the things that we probably need to talk about is our foreign policy. If you want to talk about immigration, you have to couple foreign policy to that.
Yeah.
Right. We could do like a 3-hour conversation on Monroe Doctrine in theory, right? I mean, talk about like one of the prizes of the prize white man inventions, Marcus, is the Monroe Doctrine, right? The idea like we're not going to let anybody else mess with anything we got going on.
Hey, this is ours. Even though we're not there, this is still ours.
This is still ours. Even though now it's somebody else's, it's still ours, right?
Yeah. So, yeah.
So as we're kind of moving, with this immigration thing, like, what do you think it will be? Do you think that the Democrats and Republicans just double down on their talking points for the election on this? Yeah. Like, that's what I think too. I mean, that's
and they literally won't do it. Neither of them will do anything. Look, I mean, this is one of those issues. They find the sort of divisive issues they keep them alive on purpose, right? They don't solve them, and the reason they don't solve them is because it's a fundraising opportunity for them. If they solve the problem, then they can't fundraise off it anymore, right? They can't say, oh, these people are going to come steal your jobs, and the murderers are streaming across, and they're going to kill all you people. And then the other ones are saying, like, oh, we have the children in the cages, and people are dying in the desert. And it's like, well, I mean, those things are true, but the thing is you guys don't want to do anything about it. And it's really like, I think that if they got together and the solution would be easy to find, right? But they just, neither of them really want to solve these problems, and that's a big issue with so many of our things that are going on in America, is they don't want to solve the problem. Right? They want to perpetuate the problem.
You could talk about this with so many long-standing issues, whether it's it's entitlement programs, whether it's immigration, whether it's abortion. Well, no matter what it is, like they need, like you said, the wedge issue, because it's so lucrative not to solve it, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I always talk about, is why we need a third party so desperately, is because if nobody could control anything, you'd have to find solutions, and the only way people would be in office is if they actually got something done for the people, as opposed to just stood up and said, "I'm not the other guy," you know. That's what I'm going to do, right?
Yeah.
I wrote this note like 5 minutes ago. 5 minutes ago. It says they don't fix problems, because politicians don't fix problems because they run on fear. They run on tactics of not saying why they're the best, but they're just going to say why the other guy sucks.
Yep.
They're not talking about anything, because the best way to get elected is to sell fear. And the fear of the immigrant coming to take your job, it's a proven fallacy. So when we look at these politicians, and everybody was like, well, I'm throwing away my vote on the libertarian, it's the fact that Americans are insane, because they keep doing the same thing with the duopoly over and over.
Yeah.
And expecting
different results.
Yeah.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And I commented to a guy on Twitter about that the other day. He's kind of like a gun tuber guy that talks a lot on there. And he said something about, like, he's only going to support a candidate with a valid chance of winning. You hear this argument before? And I said, do you see the circle you're talking yourself into? You're like, I won't support this guy because he's not going to win, but he's not going to win because you won't support him. And so you end up with the same crappy choice every time. Like, it blows my mind.
Look,
that
that
the American public are going to have Trump and Biden as a choice again in 2024. This is insane.
Yeah, that's my point. And the thing is if you see Trump and Biden again, even the possibility that it's Trump and Biden, if that doesn't prove to you that the system is rigged, nothing will ever prove to you that the system is rigged, right?
And dude, I know buddies here that are like, I'm talking about, dude, they're hardcore MAGA guys. Like, because I'm in Arkansas, man. I'm in the South. Like, that's a thing, man. And like these guys that, like, I'm talking about, like, Trump was just everything. Like, now slowly they're like, man, I don't. You're right. He wasn't really very pro-gun, was he? I was like, I told you this for a long time. I was like, are you finally coming around, man? So speaking of that, if we can move to some firearm stuff. So we have a case coming up to the Supreme Court. And Marcus, you're big on this one, right? Like,
yes.
So like this whole concept of Chevron doctrine,
the
right?
Chevron doctrine, yes.
Right. And so this comes from a 1984 decision. And yes, if you're thinking Chevron and you're thinking like the gas station I talked about, that's exactly the company you're talking about. So real quick story, 1984, Chevron sues some federal agency over some ambiguity in the rulemaking that they make, right? And the judges basically said, well, look, Congress didn't write this law really good. Okay, we can read it and go, man, they could have done better. Go figure. But because they appointed these secretaries, these administrators of these agencies, within reasonable bounds, will allow them to rule make and change things. And so now you're seeing that with the ATF harder than ever. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to go on a little rant here and tell every listener that if you supported Trump, the reason this shit is happening now is because of that bump stock shit he did back then. That set the precedent for the ATF to just start making rules willy-nilly and say, oh, this piece of plastic, it's a machine gun. Oh, this little card right here with a picture on it, that's a machine gun. And what's interesting about this is I was reading the court opinion, from the various things from this case back in 84. And I'm going, okay, I can see how with some of these things, like, for instance, Natural Resources Defense Council, some difficult things maybe. But the Second Amendment's pretty damn clear. It's not an unambiguous law at all, right? Yeah. So the problem we're talking about here is the NFA and the GCA, and of course this. So what do you think the chances are of this going through, man?
I think, there's a decent chance. I think the gun thing is also one of these wedge issues that they talk a loud game, and then in the end they kind of waffle on it. But I'm of the mind that, like, somebody had asked me, do you think, would it be okay if your buddies owned a bazooka, right? Yeah. And I was like, I thought about it for a minute, and I was like, And And I thought about all my buddies, and I was like, yeah, I don't think there's a problem with that. None of my buddies would take the bazooka and shoot it at somebody, right?
Right.
Like if they want to own a bazooka, that's fine with me. Like I don't, because the reality of it is like the people that use firearms to harm people, that if they didn't have a firearm, they'd find something else to harm people with, right? Like they're like
Right.
there was
Yeah.
like I was telling my wife about this, and there was just recently another one of these things where they take a car and they drive it into a group of people, right?
Yep.
And you can kill 20, 30 people with with a car pretty easily, right? Especially if it's like a march on Main Street, or you're going into a concert and there's a big crowd outside or whatever. And the killings essentially are public suicide, right? And to be fair, it's probably a lot harder to stop a guy in a car than it is to stop a guy with a gun.
Yeah.
Right.
You're right. Yeah.
Like,
No, 100%. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm just not of the mind that we should be limiting people's rights to bear arms. I don't think that that's the problem. I think that there's many other problems that are going on culturally, mental health issues, all that kind of stuff. But we know prohibition doesn't work, right? And if you prohibit guns, you're going to create a black market. You're going to create the price of stuff will go up, right? And there'll be a new kind of cartel that moves in, that's the gun dealing cartel, right? And they'll have some name for it, right? And then we'll have to have a 50-year war against this cartel that we essentially create with our prohibition, right? That's like, I'm hearing other candidates, they're like, well, what we need to do is go into Mexico and we need to just start killing all the cartel members. That's what we need to do.
That works. It always works.
Yeah. And I'm like, hold on. You want to use the U.S. military to go into a foreign land and kill people? That, to me, that's war, right? That sounds like war to me, right? So I'm not doing none of that, right? And the thing is like, you want to do that because these people are sending drugs. Well, if you took the profit out of the drugs, they'd stop selling the drugs.
Yeah,
absolutely. Only reason, because we had Al Capone from prohibition, right? The only reason there was all the gangsters in Chicago and all that kind of stuff was because of prohibition on alcohol, right? We made it illegal. It's concentrated all that power and monopoly into a core group of people, and they got power and money out of it, right? As soon as we got rid of that, what rum runners do you have running around right now, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's none of that stuff going on anymore.
Yeah, but government is the thing about it is we didn't do it. Government creates crime.
Yes,
because I thought about this one time. I think there's between 7 and 10 core crimes that encompasses all the wrong you could do to your fellow human being. Mm-hmm. Ingesting a substance is not one of those things.
Yeah.
That is, if there is a victim, it's you for making those choices.
Right.
And we should not be in the business of making sure somebody's personal decisions cost us taxpayers money.
Right.
In the sense, other than their crimes, and I'm not talking about them harming other people, stealing, killing, beating, whatever. I'm talking about them in their personal lives doing personal things behind the comfort of their home or behind in their, I don't know. We have a lot of homeless people here in California. I wanted to say in their tent. But,
yeah, they got a home. It's a fabric home, man.
But the bottom line is it's the government that's creating these problems that they tell you we need to fix.
Right. They create the problem. Well, it's that old Harry Brown line, right? Government's great at breaking your leg and then handing you a crutch and charging you money for it and saying, look at how we helped you.
Yeah. Without government, you couldn't walk. Right. And it's exactly what happened. So, and kind of like to kind of go into foray into this. So it's almost like, we talk about how they kind of attack all this from all the same angle. Right. So you have like the immigration thing, a government created problem that creates a black market. And that's the real issue, is the black market that government created. We're talking about firearm stuff, and the idea of more, regulation and registration against people like me and you eventually creates a black market. So the government creates another one. That's another problem. And so just recently, the SEC is going to be regulating crypto. Right. Like they've given a wide stance to say, hey, you can do this. And it's kind of opened up some discussions of, well, can the SEC then regulate real estate? Can the SEC then regulate, Pokemon cards? These are real questions.
Yeah.
Right. So here we are again. So now you're talking about the alternative currency. We're talking about this idea of monetary independence. And here we are again with this. So what does President Lars say to people about the crypto markets and a regulation with them?
The same thing as bazookas.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
Awesome.
Yeah,
So
pretty much the same thing as bazookas. Like,
Same
look,
thing as
here's the thing. I have no love for the Fed. I have no love for the IRS. I think that if there are free market solutions that compete with those agencies, we should be allowing those free market solutions to try to find where they fit in best, right? To solve the problems because the free market, it left to its own device, will solve the problems that we have, right? It will fix a lot of the stuff that's going on. And so to me, we should be allowing decentralized currency experiments to continue so that they can figure out exactly the best way of doing that stuff. So I'm not a fan of crypto regulation. Part of it is it's a personal responsibility issue, right? A lot of this stuff is a personal responsibility issue, right? So like the SEC is like, well, we got to crack down on this because there's evildoers out there that are using cryptocurrency to scam old people and to scam people out of their savings and that sort of stuff, right? And while that's true, I really don't need daddy government to protect me from every single thing out there. And when I step out the door, from every little thing that happens to me from the time I leave my house, or sometimes even inside my house, they want to regulate what's going on with me, right? So I would like to see us embrace crypto, embrace blockchain technology, and really just let it fly and let it like usher in a new era. Because I've been saying this for a long time. I've been in crypto for a long time. The blockchain technology is going to revolutionize and transform finance, right? And if we crack down on it, that ingenuity and that stuff is going to go to other countries, and other countries will be the ones that are reaping the benefits from that. And we'll be left out. And so, the reality of it is the reason they want to crack down on it right now is because they're trying to push their own digital currency, right?
That's right. Yes.
Digital currency, which is just the biggest pile of crap I've ever seen in my life, right? This is like
shit. Yeah.
It's the ultimate authoritarian grab where they basically look at every transaction you do, and then they can tax you on every transaction in real time. They don't even have to like have you file anymore. They just start taking your money, right? And then if they don't like how you're behaving, they can do like they did in Canada, the truckers. They just shut down your bank account and they're like, no, you're not participating anymore in society. And if there's no cash, it's not like you can go mow your neighbor's lawn and get some money to buy some food. No, you're just out of the system. You're like banished from society, right?
It's like that Black Mirror episode where the people are like, they can't see their faces. That's what I kind of liken it to, is that social credit, like you're just not in the system anymore. Like your ability to be in society is removed, is a revocable. It's not a right anymore. It's a privilege.
Yeah.
Right?
You'd be reduced to a beggar essentially. Yeah. Like you'd have to be on the street begging for people.
And people would have to give you stuff. And then there'd probably be laws about, third party
right.
like, oh, you gave some potato chips to that guy on the corner. We're going to shut you down too.
Yeah.
It's absolutely crazy.
Isn't that the greatest reason to have a bold, liberty-minded third party?
Yeah, I mean, well, of course, but sometimes we're talking in our own echo chamber here. I mean, like,
yeah, it is. But this is the things that we have to. I mean, I truly believe in a libertarian message because I saw what Democrats have done to California, and I've seen what Republicans have done to several southern states that I have family in. And
well, yeah, dude. I mean, like my state, this is a Republican stronghold, and I mean, my tax burden here is higher than it was in Louisiana by a great number. I mean, like it's not this like land of the free small government. They're involved in every damn thing of your life.
Every aspect of your life.
Every aspect of your life. They're trying to pass a law now, like you need to show your ID to like let your kid have a Facebook account. And I'm like, look, it's my business if I want my kid to have a Facebook account or not. But you just got through telling me that big tech was the enemy and they're stealing my data and they might be giving it to China. And then now you're like, but give big tech your data, please.
Yeah. First of all, I like the way you said China right now.
China.
Secondly, Democrats and Republicans shit out the most rank bullshit, and then they take a bottle of Windex to try to shine it up and hand it to the American people. That's what they do when they sell you fear and China, Russia.
And remember, Marcus, it's not the voter. The Democrat Republican voter, you can't blame them as much. I'm like, they have to start voting differently, but it's their politicians, it's their candidates, it's the machine. It just absolutely does.
We have to destroy these buffoons into oblivion. We that's why I'm not a nice guy. I'm not diplomatic.
Yeah.
And I'm done with that because it doesn't work. I tried to sway people with logic, and there's an old saying: you can sway one man, 1,000 men with their prejudices sooner than you can sway one man with logic. Or I'm messing that up, obviously.
That's facts.
Yeah, that definitely tracks there. But yeah, I mean, so when we talk about that, like that concept of like, you know, parallel economies, you talk about competition, like every single thing that you and I have that we benefit from came from competition. Like I was telling somebody about the crypto market thing and about like, you know, it being competition to the current monetary system. And I'd say, imagine you live in, it's 1908 and the only way to really get around is a horse and buggy, right? Like as a personal mode of transportation. That's the system you have. And for everyone in your life, it's working. Like, it's not great. It has its problems, but that's what you do. A guy comes along with a car, right? Nobody had to force the car. Nobody had to subsidize the car. Nobody had to make people get it. They just said, here's this, right? Yeah. And then people, so imagine if government back then said, no, we're going to make our own cars. Okay. And you can get a government car, but none of this over here because we think the horse and buggy is the way to go. Like that's kind of what you have going on right now, man. And we would be like North Korea still today, man. It'd be crazy. We're almost becoming more and more like it.
Let me interject real quick. I want Lars's opinion on this guy's question right here. Made in Anarchy.
So for the listeners, the question is, Made in Anarchy has written, if we keep playing the voting game, should there be higher requirements? IQ based, possibly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an easy answer, obviously. We can't do that.
Yeah.
You know?
No, that's the wrong answer. We should do that. That's the obvious answer is we should be doing IQ based. I'm going to even say voting requirements. Because there's people out there that scream at the Wendy's drive-through about their Frosty being warm, and you know this like.
Now their nuggets are going to be cold at McDonald's.
I don't think those people actually vote.
Yeah.
Well, I'm afraid they do. It's just like, you know, Jerry Springer, he recently passed away. And my personal opinion that I've held for 20 plus years of Jerry Springer watching is everybody that goes on that show should be sterilized. I think they shouldn't be able to. I thought they shouldn't be able to leave wherever it was, Cincinnati, Chicago, without being sterilized on their way back home.
I think he was in Cincinnati, wasn't he?
He was the mayor of Cincinnati.
So one thing that Lars is really good at, Marcus, is I believe that Lars is a very compelling voice for libertarian thought. Like,
yes.
You take the average guy and you sit down and let Lars talk to him for 10 minutes about like libertarianism and why these ideas might be work better. The average person tends to go, yeah, man, he's making a lot of sense, right? Mm-hmm. So like I think personally, I feel like the voting electorate is capable of understanding these ideas if they just would be able to listen to them.
Right? Or if they were just able to be presented with them, right? Because the message doesn't even get out to people, right? The media just suppresses this stuff, and the duopoly suppresses all other thoughts and ideas. And it's big news right now. I'm laughing because the Democrats have said they're not going to allow for Kennedy or Williamson to debate Joe Biden.
Yeah,
right.
Even
I mean. And I just put out a tweet earlier, and it said Democrats are just finding out that the system is rigged by their own party and by the Republican Party, and libertarians have known this for 50 years already.
Yeah,
right? And so I called them all out. I said, hey, if they're not willing to debate you, I am.
Yeah,
let's go. Name the time and place. We'll be on Black Powder Podcast. You can come on there. Yeah. We can debate right there.
I'll moderate it with it. We'll have them right here, and they can talk about anything they want to. Yeah. But you're right. They're not allowed to listen. They're not allowed to hear because these ideas do work, right? The propaganda wouldn't be necessary if the situation was hopeless, right? Yeah. Like that's kind of an Alex Jonesism. I think he coined about 10 years ago, and I've always liked that one. Is that idea? So. You're kind of, and I give this question to you, and kind of wrap it up with it if you want to. So, your big thing as a potential candidate for president for the Libertarian Party is you want to put the Libertarian Party on the map, as in you want to have it a household name that people are talking about. You want it to be able to be ignored, right?
Yep.
Because you want these messages to go out there. So how do you think about how we're going to get that done?
Yeah. So I've been looking at, and I kind of got this idea a few years ago, right when I was kind of thinking about running. I've been thinking about running for president for, I think, almost 3 years now. And I was listening to Larry Sharp's show, and he gave me a bunch of ideas. And one of the things that he was talking about was winning an electoral vote, right? That if we won an electoral vote, that would kind of give us more legitimacy. Turns out we've done it one other time in the 70s. It was a rogue elector cast a vote for Tony Nathan, which was and so, but this would be a legitimate win for the Libertarian Party. And what would be super awesome is, imagine on election night and they're going across the board and they're like, California is blue, Texas is red, Florida is red. What in the hell is this gold doing on the map up here in Maine? Right?
Yeah.
And imagine if the election was super close and it came down to 1 or 2 electoral votes, right? And we took that 1 or 2 electoral vote and it caused the election to flip one way or another. I don't really care how it flips, because to me the duopoly is the same. They're the same party, the party of the corporations. Like, I don't care, right? But they would lose their minds. Can you imagine the talking heads would just be like spouting about this for months on end, talking about how the Libertarian Party, messed everything up. And we need that kind of attention. We need everybody talking about us all the time. And people are like, libertarian? What's a libertarian? Right?
Yeah,
and then they go and they look it up and they're like, damn, maybe I'm a libertarian, right? Because that's how I got to libertarian, right?
I've said it to you a million times. I never talked to a group of voters in person where I didn't open up with, you're probably asking a question right now, what is a libertarian? And then I would go into a little thing, and you could tell people were like, well, damn, I think I might be one of them. Because you can win hearts and minds. So kind of elaborate, why do you think Maine is that good target?
Yeah, so I looked at about 6 or 7 different states, and what I was looking for was the least amount of people representing an electoral vote, right? Because if you're going to spend money, you want to and you have to reach those people in order to get them to vote. You want to have the most money possible per voter, right? And so there was about 4 states that had 600,000 people representing one electoral vote, right? And Nebraska also splits up their electoral votes. That's one of the things about Maine, is they split up their electoral votes. Most states, all the votes go to whoever got the winning vote, right? Yeah. But in Maine and Nebraska, they split them up. They have different congressional districts, and if you win that congressional district, you get that vote, right? So that makes Maine and Nebraska really kind of unique. And then there was, I think Rhode Island has a very small amount of people, and it was either Wyoming or Montana had a very small amount of people. And then I looked also at Alaska, and I looked around, but I figured out that in Maine they have 2 congressional districts, and both of them have 600,000 people, right? And one district is super rural, and so the people are all spread out. The other district is basically like 3 cities, right? And I'm like, wow, knowing the social media that I know and knowing the marketing that I know, you want to have a high concentration of people so that your advertising dollars go even farther, right? So I started looking at the 1st congressional district of Maine, because we can buy buses, we can buy TV ads, we can buy radio ads, and it's going to reach all those people a lot better. And we are on limited resources. Let's face it, Libertarian Party maybe will raise $3 million, $4 million. Look, there's candidates that are running for the Republican Party that put $10 million in for their own campaign. Right? Like that, we're not on the same playing field, right? So we need to take the limited resources we have and make the biggest noise we can with those resources. And so that's what my plan is about. And I think that we can do it, because 600,000 people is not, if you have $3 million, that's $5 a person, basically, right? That you can spend on trying to get that person to vote, right? And the other thing is we have a lot of volunteers all over the country, right? And some people are willing to go places and put in volunteer work and put in effort. And if you're all in a city, imagine if you're in one of these cities in Maine and you're walking down the street, and every corner for 5 or 6 blocks that you go, there's a libertarian standing on the corner trying to hand you a thing and saying, have you heard of Lars Mapstead? Do you want to hear about his plan? And they're like, no. But by the time, that whole thing about you have to close somebody 6 times before they say yes, right? Well, let's close them 6 times while they're walking down the street to their park. And they're like, fine, okay, I'll give this guy Lars a look at, right? Like, just stop pestering me, right? leave me alone. I'll go look at him, okay? And then that can give us that opportunity to win that vote, right? And so I think that it's actually possible. I think that there's I'm excellent at social media. I'm excellent at getting the most bang for the buck out of advertising dollars. And I think it's totally possible. And so that's what my plan is.
if there's anybody that can do it, yeah, there you go. That's a good one for that sound effect. If there's anybody that can do it, I will say that it would be you. Okay, like this is very much sort of another David and Goliath story, right? And you kind of have that. That's how you kind of lived your life. I mean, you came from a situation where most people would probably still be in that situation, and not only did you get out of that situation, you achieved more than most people ever dreamed to. I mean, so I mean, if I had to say who do I believe that can accomplish that sort of task, I would say it was Lars Mapstead.
I
Would you agree with
concur.
me on that? You
Yes,
concur on that, Marcus? I
yes, I
think
do.
so. Well, we're coming up here right on an hour, so we're going to kind of start getting this wrapped up. Marcus, do you have any other questions for our lovely guests that we enjoy so much?
Yeah. Where can more people find your message and understand where you're coming from and get to know you as I feel Michael and I have got to know you as a real solid dude? We're not in the business of endorsements yet, but you are freaking awesome.
Oh
And
yeah, I agree with that.
I personally admire your story because it's very similar to my father. I belong to the first generation of Matthews men that didn't pick cotton. And my dad went from picking cotton to owning, at one point, owning 3 houses in 3 states,
There you go.
Nevada,
That's
Texas, and
awesome.
Florida. So I try to convince my father he's a libertarian too because he went to 3 states where they don't have state income tax.
Yeah.
And I think that was deliberate, but he he moved to California out of segregated Alabama back in the 60s for a better chance, and he achieved that. So achievement is a personal thing the government should never be involved in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I love your message. So if you want to elaborate on your
Yeah, give us a
contact,
30-second pitch, man. Where can we find you at? Where can
Yeah.
people learn more about you?
So I'm most active on Facebook. I just this last week I reached 1.5 million people with one of my posts about abolishing the IRS. So that was
Hell
pretty
yeah.
awesome, right?
Yeah.
And I was looking at my metrics and I hit 23 million people that I reached on my Facebook page since launching it, which is pretty like individual 23 million people. So it's working. The message is getting out there. So Lars for president on Facebook. I'm slowly building up my Twitter account, and that's starting to grow pretty rapidly. It's still small, but it's I never put too much effort into it. But Libertarian Lars on Twitter at Libertarian Lars, and then of course you can go to my website that has more information about my policies. Lars24.com, and we're going to be really beefing that up with a lot more policies as the policy team kind of like gets rolling and we get more information on that to get very specific about the things that we're going to do. More on this immigration that we're talking about. There's a whole bunch of plans that we've kind of come up with that we're still putting together in writing so that people can really know like exactly what we're planning to do for the campaign and for, setting America straight. It's like we're just trying to get common sense solutions to easy to solve problems, right? Easy problem that is like, well, that's a no-brainer. Of course we would do that, right? Like, why hasn't it been done yet? And the reason most of the time it hasn't been done yet is because there's no political will to do it because they're still fundraising off of it, like we talked about earlier, right?
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, 100%. Well, Lars, thank you so much for coming on tonight, man. I always do enjoy sitting down with you. I know Marcus does as well. As always, remember we are sponsored by the Firearms Radio Network and tonight, Common Arbs Trade Company. Below, use the promo code Black Powder for 10% off any order over $100. Go to their website, man. Marcus, I'm telling you, this dude's got some cool stuff over there at Common
It's
Arms.
awesome. Yes.
Yeah, I mean he's got a good site, good dude.
And he's always commenting on social media. They're always in there, and they have great stuff to say. I love it when I see Common Arms Trade Company in the.
I do too, man. I really come to like that page a lot, and
exactly.
I like his take on things. It's easy, but if you're pro gun, and like you're kind of like me, it's easy for me to like you. I'm like, dude, I'm your best friend now, like So I mean, there's Marcus right there. So Marcus, you want to take us offline here the same way we always do?
As always, first of all, thank you, Lars. I look forward to speaking to you at another juncture in our cross sections and of life. Thank you very much, Michael, for everything you do and being the awesome co-host that you are. Thank you, Common Arms. And as with everything that we always say on the end of our podcast, and this is truly from our hearts.
Absolutely.
Live
free or die.
Or die.
Take us off, brother.
Thank you.
Thank you.